Hello and welcome to Transportation Matters. You know, there's so many hot button topics in the trucking industry these days that it's sometimes hard to keep them straight. You've got the economy, long combination vehicles, electric onboard recorders, hands-free technology, and even sleep apnea. And who better to give an update on these goings-on than the Ontario Trucking Association itself. Senior Vice President of the OTA, Stephen Laskowski, gave a brief update on all 5 of these topics at the most recent Driving for Profit seminar. Today, we hear about the growing problem of sleep apnea among truck drivers.
Sleep apnea. This is an issue that has been percolating in the United States for about 4 to 5 years. What is sleep apnea? Does anyone in this room been diagnosed with sleep apnea? There we go. One person put their hand up. For those who aren't familiar with what sleep apnea is, it's an obstruction in your throat, and it ends up being an issue when you end up trying to go to sleep. You can't sleep properly. It interrupts your sleep. Our industry, the trucking industry, has been identified as one of the leading sectors in the occupations that deal with sleep apnea. The reason for this: it tends to be people who lead a little bit more of a sedentary lifestyle, who perhaps are a little bit overweight, with a body mass index over 30. And when you do a cross of the drivers in North America, a cross section, you find out that perhaps truck drivers tend to be a little bit overweight, they have a sedentary lifestyle. I mean, they're driving truck, and perhaps aren't eating the right things, which also leads to that. Well, what does sleep apnea lead to? There have been major U.S. studies, and I'm sure you're saying, oh my gosh, you tell me another study. You pay for the right thing, you get the right answer. There is no question about what these studies are coming out with. People with sleep apnea are 2 to 7 times likely to be in a vehicle, when they're in control of a vehicle, to be in a collision. The U.S. government has gone through these numbers and gone through these studies a number of times. And so what are they doing? Their process in the United States is a little bit different than our process for regulations. They are going through a notice of proposed rulemaking. Although they haven't gone through it yet, they're talking about it. We expect a notice of proposed rulemaking on sleep apnea to be released probably December, January, latest February of next year. Well, what does that mean for you as owners in Canada? Everybody in here, this room, well, primarily, I'm looking around the room, I can recognize a lot of faces, go north-south. You know about drug and alcohol testing. You know what the Canadian law says, but you know if you want to be in the U.S., you got to be in a drug and alcohol testing. Well, for sleep apnea, what's going to happen in the United States? Same thing for a CDL. If you want a CDL in the United States, you're going to be tested for sleep apnea. And if you have sleep apnea, you're going to have to go through a program as a driver to be, cured isn't the right word, but to be managed. There's going to be different phases. Sleep apnea, just like any other disease, has its ranges. So you might be mild, you might be moderate, you might be severe. So how the NPRM works out, we don't know for sure. But we know this: drivers are going to go through it. And what does that mean? Canadian drivers are going to have to go through it. Now, there was one person in the room who put up their hand and said they had sleep apnea. One of the treatments for sleep apnea is a mask. And in my presentation, which I'm going to kill Rodney when I get back to the office, there's a picture of a mask, and it's a machine. Now that's at the severe end of it, and you end up basically for the rest of your life primarily sleeping with this mask and this machine at your bedside. Now, not everyone needs that, and what our big concern is that in the United States right now they're saying everyone will have to have the machine. The machine can range anywhere from $2,000 to $2,500 plus diagnosis. What we're saying here in Canada is that, and we as CTA and OTA are working with the Canadian government, is this is coming, we need to prepare. So how do we need to prepare? Well, there's different options. There might be a mouth guard. for drivers. It might be as simple, in some cases, as just exercise and diet and the mouth guard, etc. But make no doubt about it, I'll move on. We are going to have to, as an industry, deal with sleep apnea. And I've heard a number of carriers, and we're going to have carriers. Brian, I think Brian Taylor is on that panel. Our convention is November 18th and 19th. We're going to be doing a 2-hour session with carriers, U.S. and Canadian government officials, talking about this whole issue of sleep apnea, how we as an industry need to deal with it, how we're going to have to deal with it, how Canadian government's responding, and how the industry is responding.